Hey, everybody, and welcome to my writing playground. This is episode number 3 of Diverse Sci-Fi and Fantasy Stories podcast. I'm your host, Alicia McCullough. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast is all about me honoring my son's legacy by sharing my diverse science fiction and fantasy stories with the world. Today, I have the wonderful opportunity to share the works of another author who also writes diverse science fiction and fantasy. Let me tell you about Jessica Cage. Award-winning and USA Today bestselling author, Jessica Cage was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Writing has always been a passion for her. She dabbles in artistic creations of all sorts, but at the end of the day, it's the pen that her hand itches to hold. Jessica had never considered following her dream to be a writer because she was told far too often there is no money in writing. So she chose the path most often traveled. During pregnancy, she asked herself an important question. How would she be able to inspire her unborn son to follow his dreams and reach for the stars if she never had the guts to do it herself? Jessica decided to take a risk and unleash the plethora of characters and their crazy, adventurous worlds that had previously existed only in her mind into the realm of readers. She did this with the hopes to inspire not only her son but herself, inviting the world to tag along on her journey to become the writer she has always wanted to be. She hopes to continue writing and bringing her signature Cage fantasies to readers everywhere. Okay, hey, and welcome, Jessica. It's great to finally meet up with you and for this interview. How's it going?
Hey, it's
Very
going good. It's a little bit early in the morning, but I'm happy to be here. I
good.
tried to get up a little earlier to depuff my face, but I'm so excited to
You
be
look
here speaking.
marvelous.
with you.
All right, let's start with our questions. So, tell us about the project that you'd like to share today. What's the genre, and is this a part of a book or a series?
So I'll be sharing a bit from one of the books for the Gin Rebellion series. It is a um, urban fiction and post-apocalyptic series that follows a cast of characters who are magical beings living on Earth 300 years after a magical apocalypse.
Mm.
So in our modern times, humans find out that magic really does exist, and they decide that they're going to go to war with magic, and they lose that war. So now we're in the future where the world is now run by those supernatural, powerful beings, and we're focusing on a group of friends who are basically trying to stop the second coming apocalypse.
Gotcha. I love this world. I'm excited about it. Okay,
Yes.
so you need to tell me, why are you the person to tell this story or write this story or this series? And what makes this story unique to you?
So this story started as a young girl's wondering about the genie from Aladdin. So the main characters in the series are jinn, which are genies. And I'm always the one who's like wondering about the character that's not so focused on in a movie or a story. And I always wonder what happens to Genie after Aladdin dies. Like, he's this immortal being. Like, his life doesn't end when Aladdin's off the scene. And I've been thinking about that since I was a little girl.
Mm.
And then finally this storyline just kind of came to me. And I feel like ideas are energy that passes from one person to the next. And if you don't grab hold of it when you get that idea, that energy will leave you and it will go on to the next person. It's kind of
Mm.
like, have you ever seen something on TV and you're like, I thought about that like 3 or 4 years
Yeah,
ago,
I
you know what I
have.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Came out here and invented it. It's like, yeah, because that energy, that idea was given to you and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't grab hold of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get hit with that powerful moment of like energy and I'm like, okay, I have to write this. This is meant for me. I don't want to wake up 5 or 6 years from now and see someone else has like written the story that I was dreaming of,
Right. Well, I love the gin. When I saw it, I immediately thought of I Dream of Jeannie or Black Genies, but I might be a little
Yeah.
older than you are. But Aladdin is
No,
good. That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
one of the characters is actually, she's very I Dream of Jeannie. Like she does, like she wears all of the
The
bells and whistles
attire,
and
yes.
she's very Jeannie like. I think she loves the attention it brings.
That's neat. Okay, so you kind of gave me a little bit of inspiration, but did you want to talk a little bit about your reason for writing this book or the series that you've written?
So I think it's kind of the reason I write everything I write. I grew up loving these stories of like fantasy and magic and paranormal, like sci-fi, like all of it. I loved it so much. But I never saw myself reflected in those characters,
Mm,
And then if I did see a little Black girl, she wasn't on the scene for very long, or, most of the Black characters were either very minor or they died.
yes,
So
right?
I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to start writing stories that were about characters who I could see myself reflected in, and not just for me, but for everybody. I mean, all the little girls of color. I mean, that's my inspiration. Most of my stories center around women of strength. Um, and Jen is a little different. It starts off with the guy, but as we progress, you get to see more of the characters, and I think it becomes more female focused.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's my inspiration. This story has been in my head forever, and when I feel connected to the characters, and I feel like I have a duty to tell their story. And because recently I've seen so many more authors of color writing in this genre, and I'm so
Yes.
excited because it was so hard to find us, even just
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago. I'm like, I don't know where you guys are, but I know you exist. I can't be the only one. So it's so amazing to see this explosion of just color, and
Yes.
when I say characters of color, I don't just mean Black people. I've had this conversation with one of my characters doesn't look Black enough, and I'm like, okay, that's not the point of this. It's just so that more than just Caucasian readers can see themselves reflected.
Mm.
My world did not look like any of the books I read. It was all shades, color, sizes, and that's what I wanted to reflect in the story. And when Jen, I feel like the story was meant for me to write it because I would go to sleep at night and I would dream about this character. I would think about this character, and it was something that started when I was young. Like, I've been thinking about this particular character since I was a little girl, and I feel like in the recent years I finally felt capable of writing the story
Confident.
in the way
Mm-hmm.
that it deserved to be written.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So, is there a theme that you generally like to impart to your readers? And if so, what might that theme be?
Um, the theme of this particular series is understanding, um,
Mm.
trying to be more caring and conscientious of the other people around us. I feel like in this series, they deal with a lot of struggles because they thought that by putting humans out, the world was going to be this amazing, like well-run, issueless place.
Mm.
And then they come to find out, like, we're not that much better than the humans. Like, there's a lot of issues with classism, and just people aren't being treated equally across the world. And
Gotcha.
as great as they thought they were doing, it's like we often get in our bubbles and we become blinded to everything outside of us. And I think
Mhm.
a strong theme throughout this series is think about the person next to you. Think about the person across the street, across the world. It's so easy to get comfortable in your own skin and your own space and forget that not everybody has that. So I really hope that when people read this book, they see that you really do need to consider outside of yourself. And I think that's where we start to make progress as like, you know, as a human race.
Right, right. So this theme of understanding, is this something that you've personally experienced, or is there something about it that fascinates you? What's kind of the inspiration behind this theme?
So this was really when I first started writing this book, it was really when like at the beginning of like Black Lives Matter. And I think we were all being kind of force fed just how, you know, unfair and prejudiced and racist. And so that was like the running, you know, the running narrative for my life. Like everywhere you looked, you were seeing it. It was constant. It was videos and Facebook posts and newscasts, and it's just insane. And
Right.
I started writing this story like maybe um a month, I would say, before everything kind of like exploded in Ferguson. And
Mm,
that hit me like, and I took a step back, and I didn't, it was like I didn't want to write it.
mm,
I didn't want to bring that theme to my story because I tend not to go that deep with, you know, the social political messaging in my book. But then the story was like, nope, this is the time for you to write it. This is why you're feeling this now. It needs to be represented. And I gotta force myself to do that. And it was therapeutic for me
mm.
to write the scenes and to think about those messages inside of the book for myself. So it was kind of like me writing this book was getting me through kind of a really traumatic time um,
Right.
in my life. Yeah.
Very charged time, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about what you want to tell potential readers about the diversity in your story, because you've already kind of talked about that. But I mean, what you've already discussed with your theme is
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Um, but in general, if someone was approaching your stories as a reader and they were looking for diversity, why should they give your stories a shot? What's in it for them for that?
I'm sorry. I was just gonna read that. So when I say diversity, like diverse characters, I try to write my characters across the board. Because I think people see Black people in like a
Mhm.
one-dimensional kind of way.
Yes.
And I don't see that. I have my, you know, my super sophisticated friends. I have my hood ratchet friends. I have, you know, my Ivy League friends. And, you know,
Yes.
so we're across the board. We're fancy. We're like, I'm the more comfy, like stay at home friend, you know. So I try to bring all of those personalities that I see day in and day out into my stories, because I think it's important not to write these characters that just fit one narrative of what a person of color is. You know,
Hmm.
um, just because someone's Latin doesn't mean they're like, you know, salsa and doing salsa through every scene, or you know what I mean. Like I have Latin friends that are like way more like Black than I am. You know what I mean? If you want to go by the
Hmm.
stereotypes. So I try to bring in characters who are well, you know, fleshed out and have deep understanding of who they are. And I feel like you see
Hmm.
them growing throughout the series. You see them facing and really facing like the demons of their past. And
Hmm.
so I try to write character driven stories. So yes, it's fantasy. It's like, you know, dragons flying around and, you know, you see all that, but it's really focused on the growth and the development of these characters because they think they're all good. You know, I think we all get to a point where we're like, yeah, I'm good in my life. I know what I'm doing. And then like tomorrow it's like, no, you don't, slap you right back down. So I try to bring that into the characters. I don't want them to seem like every character is the same. I want them all to be so different. They have different backgrounds. They have different, you know, whereas one character grew up, you know, in suburbs, the other character grew up in the city, but they're best friends. Like I feel like
Right.
that is the the kind of diversity. I mean, yeah, most of my characters are of color. None of my main characters are not a character of color in any of my books. It just doesn't happen. And I have been asked about that, like, well, why are none of your main characters, white? Why do they need to be? Like, I don't. There are millions of books out there with the main character.
Okay, I gotta stop you there. They don't need to be. You write what you write.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I feel like I represent, who I see in my life, and I just want to bring some depth and, multi-dimensional characters to the forefront.
I like it. Okay, so you do have you said you write African American characters. I'm thinking. So tell us about your diverse protagonists. So do you have two of them, a hero and a heroine, or who are they and what's at stake for them in your story?
So the hero in Jin is our main character. His name is Jin, and it's a joke in the book that his name is Jin, and he was turned into a Jin. He started off as a warlock, and someone very evil changed him into what he is. So it's a running joke in the book, like, oh, they turned you into a Jin, haha. But he is this neutral person. He doesn't want to be in it. He's like, I'm here, whatever, I'm minding my business. But then, like I said, there are some issues in the world as it has been built, as it's structured. And this is brought to him time and time again. They're like, can you help us fix this? You're one of the most powerful beings around. If you stepped up, we could fix this. But he's like, I'm neutral. I said I wasn't getting in it. I'm not getting in it. But then a friend comes to him and says that the wife that he thought had died is actually still alive, and she's been held captive. And if he's willing to help them, make some changes, then they will help him get his wife. So they kind of put him in a bind. You need to help us if you want to find her. And that first book really focuses around his struggles with the guilt he feels because his actions led to their lives being changed. They were living this nice, simple little life. And then because he couldn't mind his business like she wanted him to, they were captured and changed into Jin. So he's dealing with this guilt. He's like, I don't even know if she's going to want to see me. It's been hundreds of years since I've last seen her, but she's in trouble and I need to help her. And then our heroine of the story is this little bookworm. She's a fae, and she seems like she's not going to do much. And then at the end of it, she's the one that, pulls all the punches and gets the job done. She's smart and funny and eats a lot of steak. Like, I love her so much. And she's one of, like, all of my readers, like, I love Pryor so much. She's so amazing. And I'm like, I just think that I feel like as a book nerd, it's nice to see the book nerd kind of pop out the library and save the day.
Right. Well, I originally started as a librarian. I was a librarian for 20 years, so I love the bookworm too. All right, Jessica, are you ready to share your story with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to be reading from book 6, actually. I just read this with my in my reader group, and they loved it. So I figured I would do it here. It's a theme from the beginning of the book, and it talks about Natara and Jin and where they are in their life. Natara is now expecting a child, and they're just kind of discussing how that's going to change the aspect of their lives. Okay. Natara sat on the couch of their humble little suburban home that felt out of place in the new world. She drank her tea and rubbed her belly anxiously. She hadn't even known that she was pregnant until Cybella's announcement just a few days earlier. Yet now she had a bump that lifted her shirt enough to expose the bottom of her stomach. This is happening, isn't it? She looked at her husband, who still wore an expression that told her he was once again reliving the moment of declaration when they were told their lives would change forever. I guess it is. Yes. Jen held the glass of whiskey spiked tea and stared at her hand, which moved in small circles over her belly. A child. You don't want this, do you? Natara tucked her shirt down to cover herself and her disappointment. I understand this wasn't expected. We didn't even know this was something we could do. No, I mean, yes, of course. I want this. He joined her on the couch and cringed at the bout of doubt he inspired in his wife. I wanted more than anything I've ever wanted in my life. You have to understand that I put the idea of having children out of my mind so long ago. We always wanted this, to have a family together, but I had to accept that because of my actions, that was no longer something that I thought was possible for us. I'm still processing this, and I guess that it's taking me a lot longer than it should be. I get it, Jen. I gave up on that dream too, not to mention that I can't even remember the last time. I'm sorry, I can't even remember my age at this point in my life. I just assumed that all that reproduction stuff had long since been deactivated. I don't even have my menstrual anymore. I haven't since I turned. She lowered her voice and dropped her eyes to her stomach. If you don't want this, Jen, tell me now. I can handle it. I mean, it'll suck, but I can handle it. Natara. Jen took the teacup from her and placed it on the coffee table alongside his. Despite the fact that I just told you I want this, I want you to forget about me for a moment. Forget about everything else that was told to us. How do you feel about this? The child, she sighed lovingly. Yes, I need to know. She looked down to her stomach and then up to him. I'm terrified, Jen, and yet still somehow I'm excited for the possibility. I still long for that dream of having a family, the one we always talked about. A part of me has always longed for that which was stolen from us. I know that this isn't how we saw this happening. It's not the little farm we built together, but it's happening. And it seems like a cruel joke that this is given to us and yet threatened at the same time. Nothing is ever easy, is it? Jen laughed and pressed his hand against her stomach. This is really happening. I know the word easy isn't an adjective I would say is often applied to the description of our lives. She lifted her hand to touch his face. Despite that, I want this. I want our child and our family. You will have it all, Natara. His lips pressed against the open palm of her hand. I will do everything in my power to make sure you have whatever your heart desires. I owe you that and so much more. Daigle, she choked out the name of the man who had been responsible for every disruption to their lives that she could remember. He wants our child. He wants to take our baby away, Jen. That is never going to happen, Natara. There is no way in hell I would allow it. What he did to Rosie, I couldn't imagine living through that. The pain she must feel every day. She wiped the tears that formed in her eyes. It was after the revelation of Natara's pregnancy that Rosie finally opened up about her past. She told them how Daigle had taken the lives of her 3 children to grant himself immortality before he turned her into a Jinn as well. I'm so worried about her. Why? Jin hadn't considered anyone or anything outside of the well-being of his wife, and his mind was consumed by her and their child. She has been suffering all this time, and she finally felt free. You heard how she spoke. She finally felt that weight of his darkness lift from her soul, and now it's happening all over again. She shook her head and wiped away her tears. Can you imagine what she must be going through? The fear that I feel now must be nothing in comparison to her pain. I keep telling you that I'm okay, Rosie's voice whispered before she appeared around the corner from the hall. The curvy woman had abandoned her usually vibrant attire for a more homely look of jeans and a sweater with the wide neck that hung from one shoulder. Sorry, I swear I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just caught the tail end of that. I'm so sorry. Natara stood from the couch and wrapped her arms around her friend. Why the hell are you sorry? Rosie coughed and tapped Natara's arm with her hand, asking that she loosen her grip around her throat. You've done nothing wrong, Natara. It feels terrible to have even a glimpse of happiness in this situation, knowing that you've suffered so much. Natara let her friend go and wiped her eyes again. And to be facing this situation again, I can't. Rosie pressed her finger against Natara's full lips to stop her string of unnecessary apologies. You need to enjoy this. I'll say this once more, and hopefully you'll heal me this time. I'm okay, or at least I will be when all of this is over. Your being miserable won't make my pain any easier to bear. Trust me. She led her back to the couch and positioned her between the two of them. Rosie moved to Natara's left hand to place it in Jen's and took her right hand in her own. That baby is ours. That beautiful bundle of life that is growing inside of you is a part of every one of us. We will protect it and you at all costs. What happened to my sweet little angels will not happen to yours. That is what I came here to tell you. You're amazing, Natara whispered. Really, I'm just a mama who couldn't protect her own babies. Because of that trauma, we understand what threat is coming for yours. Rosie wiped away her own tears. It actually helps me to know that what happened to them may prevent the same from happening to this little one. It means that they didn't die in vain. That's it. That's the scene.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Ooh, I have chills.
Okay.
Thank you so
Yeah, it's
much.
one of my favorite things.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love your work. It's riveting. Okay, so tell the readers where they can go and find your work.
Of course, my work is available on my website. It's jessicacage.com, my name.com. No relation to Luke Cage, by the way. You can always find me on Amazon. A couple of my books are available wide, so they're in Barnes and Noble, and all the other outlets that are skipping my mind right now. But you can always find me through my website, and I am at jcageauthor on all social media platforms, so feel free to connect.
All right. All right, so I'd also love to hear what readers think about Jessica's stories. Feel free to post a comment on my blog. Either me or Jessica will respond. All right, everybody, I'm author Alicia McCullough, and I write science fiction and fantasy stories for readers who want diverse protagonists and unique storylines. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support me or donate to my Cup of Tea fund, just head over to my blog on my website. Find this post and click on the donate button at the bottom. If you're not one of my subscribers and want to join my League of Heroes, go to www.aliciamccullough.com to sign up for my newsletter to get updates, learn about my latest projects, and purchase my diverse sci-fi and fantasy stories. If you're already one of my subscribers, thank you so much. Please feel free to share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Okay, until next time. So I've never done this on YouTube, but I'll say live long and prosper. And thanks for listening. Thanks, Jessica.